get this part going. You guys have already met Ben, and I'm going to let Ben pretty much oversee. And I know I've already talked to a couple of you that have watched his video already, and obviously he does really, really good content.
Yep,
and
we're going to grab some lunch.
I want you just to feel free. As many questions.
I'm just dropping something off at my office real quick.
Somebody needs to mute themselves here.
That's Christy.
Okay, and so ask questions, raise your hand, or just
sorry guys,
pop in and start talking. It's okay. Thanks for joining us, Christy. Yeah, and any of the other mentors that are on the call, please feel free to jump in and chat. We're just going to have a conversation. So Ben, if you want to start talking about it. One thing I want to tell you before this, and Ben, you can kind of prepare for me to give you a call for a class in July that we're going to do. We're going to spend the month of June talking about how to really set up fantastic, no recall kind of purchase agreements. That's what we're going to talk about for the month of June, is everything purchase agreement, how to really, really do it so that they just get accepted. And then in the month of July, we're going to go into listing agreements and how to set your listings up to have a systems in place and listings that don't get glitches right in the middle of them, and that they smoothly go as smoothly for the seller as they buyer. So this will be kind of a precursor to that, Ben, and you can hit on any parts of those secrets that you have about setting up sellers, and that the listing appointment and expectations and all of the things that you talked about. So you take it from here. I'm going to give you the floor.
Sounds great. Thanks, Carol. I do specifically put a lot of the helpful stuff in that video that you could watch it, and I mean, I didn't leave anything out. I try not to. So if you have questions, please let me know. But what I don't want to do is repeat everything I've told you in the video, because then I wouldn't have made a video. I would have just done it live. So seriously, all questions would be great to answer. I guess as just a little record keeping for background, last year I sold 45 houses listings. This year I've sold 20 listings. It was 100 transactions last year and 47 have occurred this year, but 20 are listings this year and 45 last year were listings, just so you know what I'm speaking about. Does anyone have specific questions, or else I guess I'll just float freely on whatever I want? Julia, you had your finger up.
Yes. I have a question about, that initial conversation before you meet them at their home for the listing appointment. I started right out of the gate with a couple potential listings and worked through some different things. And I was just curious, there's a podcast that I listen to that I really enjoy, and they talk about the benefit of sending a pre-listing email that kind of goes over kind of your basics of anytime you're going to list, like, take down personal items, take down the doily curtains, like that kind of stuff. And they say that they do that in a pre-listing email because then it feels less personal, coming from the agent, like saying all of these things. And I don't know, just both of my situations that I started out with, when I showed up to the homes were borderline hoarder-ish. That, like, I've never seen anything like it, and my mentor hasn't really seen anything like it. So I was just wondering if you do anything beforehand. I mean, I know you talk with them and all of the steps that you mentioned in your video, but I didn't know if there's any of those other little steps that you take before you go to the home, or maybe I just had two outliers in my first attempts. But
right. In my pre-listing packet, it does have some of those just bullet pointed tips, like what to clean. I mean, just kind of what you just said. which I give them when I'm there. I used to deliver it ahead of time, but even if I did, it would be like 2 days in advance. Certainly was not with any anticipation that they had time to get to do all that stuff. A lot of people do fret about the condition of their house before I come over, where they almost don't want me to come over until they've done all these particular things. And I always tell them it really doesn't matter for me. It's not meant to be show ready. But yours is like the other issue, like they are just so far away from having their house be listed. I kind of think those are two outliers,
Okay.
only because of all the people in my entire life that I know and like and trust, and they me, and who have ever referred me to. None of them have ever been hoarders. At the beginning of your real estate career, you just pick up people on the fringes who, once you get into it, it's people who are like you. They're your friends. They're your friends' friends. Your friend's grandma, who's probably not a hoarder either. So you just get kind of the crummy ones early on. I think the universe just has it happen that way. With that situation though, even if I walked into it and it was that way and I was caught off, I probably would be caught off guard. I would want to have the courage to tell them all of those things to their face. And I might even say, hey, as a professional, I always want to give you the very best advice and counsel. I think that's my real benefit here, and I'm going to take great care of you. But please know, when I give you any advice, it's always with your best interest in mind, based on best. I mean, I kind of set it up so they know this is all really sincere, but they do need to hear your house like this is going to sell for way less than it's supposed to. I think some agents fumble through that, or are scared to do it, or they just start telling them the things that are wrong, which good salespeople can kind of clean that all up. So I would, even if you send them the packet, they probably are still a hoarder per se, even if they read your bullet points. So they're going to need a lot of hand holding and counseling and pointing out things. I do have that staging consultant who I will use mostly just to save my time, but there's a little benefit that she's the bad guy, not me, because she's telling them to do this stuff. So that, in that scenario with a sensitive person, might be extra helpful. But those feel like one-offs, but I would still hold their hand and prepare them to know this is all really relevant and good care and advice. But if your home's going to sell for the very best, we'd want to do these things. But you could also say, because I just had one, and sometimes it's like, do you want to make the most amount of money, or do you just want to sell it? Like, some people just need to unload their house. And if they bought it for 60,000 20 years ago and they've wrecked it, but it's still worth 90,000, just like it is, but it could be 150. It's like, they may not want to make the most amount of money. And I think that's okay for a person to not to want to do. So I don't know if that touches into some of that.
Yeah.
Ben,
Yeah.
I'd like to add to that too, is I think you have to put on your therapist hat at the very beginning, just kind of what Ben is alluding to here in, there's people that just can't take a hint. And when somebody is a quote hoarder, their idea of hinting at the way you clean things up and what is specific to need to be done are two different things, and they're going to hear you differently. The direct approach is great, but you, as Ben said, you don't want to be the bad guy. For us, every single listing that we do, one of the reasons why we never have to settle on lowering our commission is because we present the value that we're going to bring to them early on. And of course, one of the things is professional pictures, but high-end professional pictures will do, Mataports and things like that. So it's a little bit more extended, but we also say, we include for you a consultation with a staging person. That does not include bringing in furniture, bringing out furniture, all of those things. What it includes is a professional's eye, somebody else that can come in, even if you weren't there, and say, these are the things that need to be done, and give you a roadmap. And we pay for that because we don't want to be that person any more than I want to be the lender person that's going to tell them how much money they have to bring to the table. Or I don't want that. That's not my It's not my lane. I don't want to be in it. And then we also include having a pre-inspection that's done and all in time. And we will kind of orchestrate this whole thing, but it's other people that we bring in to assist them. And sometimes that's really helpful for them to know that it doesn't have to all be them, because I don't know about you, but if I sit in one spot and I look in that room and I look in that room and I look up there, and then I think about the stuff that's in the garage, it stops me. But if that staging person says, these are some things that need to be done immediately, and then we will bring in an organizer, and the organizer will give you a, however much you want to be somebody to be able to help you with, they'll give you an estimate on what those costs are going to be. So little pieces, little at a time. And then you don't get this complete overwhelm of they had no idea what you were looking for. So does that kind of make sense with what Ben said too?
Yeah. I was just trying to see if there was a way to tactfully kind of split it up into smaller things like that. So it's not so overwhelming for a seller who, doesn't want to clean out her closets and doesn't want to do all these things. It's like, well, I don't know that you're ready to sell right now then, but
you're
I don't know.
constantly back to the therapist. You're constantly bringing people back to, it's like, you're a music teacher. If somebody comes to you and says, if they were playing piano, I want to play a song. Well, before you play the song, we're going to break it down to this one little piece, and then this piece. This is a piano. So, but bringing other people in to be the kind of the good guy, bad guys. So they're the helper, and they're the person that says, this is not a big deal. We can do this.
Mhm.
Here's where we start, and I'll do this piece for you. And many people, particularly now, because they have a lot of equity in their homes, they're willing to pay for it. They're willing to pay to have somebody else help them to do those kinds of things. It's not an easy job, but it's probably the biggest part of where you have to be the real communicator and the listener and the therapist, the home therapist. So, yeah. And I think, Ben, you said you have an organized list.
Yeah, it's just tips and tricks of cleaning and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And depersonalizing is the first thing. That's, I tell people, if somebody comes into your house, we don't want them to know how many kids you have, what your kids' names are, the personal stuff about you that's going to have anything to do with, stop it, dogs, have anything to do with how they're going to judge the house. So that's a number one thing. And that can be really hard for some people too. The thought of living without pictures of their grandkids, for a while, 15 minutes. So
I was also going to add, sometimes, Julia, when I've faced those scenarios, it puts me in kind of a bind, because I would like to help them sell their house, and they obviously need more help than anyone, and the most kind, caring realtor. But I'm like, do I photograph it and it looks terrible? Do I take professional? We don't need high definition photos of your piles of trash sitting in your house. Is it like, do I take iPhone photos? It's like, it's all sloppy. It's going to come off sloppy no matter how I do it. I mean, it sort of, I feel like I'm torn back and forth about, is it even worth my time? Not that the person's not worth the time, but I just think there's only one right way to sell a house, and that's to slow down, to do it right, to prepare it, to pre-inspect it, to stage it, to photograph it, to be proud of it. Like, there's some agents that want to do it the other way, which is just slap it around and put it for sale. But like, that's not how I want to do it. I don't want to have 50 gleaming listings a year and then have 5 just total trash ones, basically. Like, not that it's my reputation I'm worried about, but I feel like I'm doing it wrong the whole way through, and I'm not serving the client at all. And I'm like, what are you paying me for if I just say your home's in the MLS, there's no photos, it's for sale in 6 minutes from now? Like, but I think some realtors would be like, oh yeah, I'll just do it. I'll just drive the price down. And I've sort of explained that to sellers that there's a really right way to do this. And I've come to find a lot of sellers want to do it the right way, which is a little preparation time, and they want to make the most amount of monies. And it doesn't mean they've got to redo their house, but they just want to put in the work. And even I've been so torn because I have one coming up in Dundee, and it's just a renter's in it, and it's just pretty gross. Holes are punched in the walls. And I almost told the guys, like, do you want me to try to just sell it privately? And, some agents that I know, because I can't put high definition photos of holes punched in your walls for the whole world to see. It's going to actually do a disservice to the house. So it's totally a funny predicament, and I have compassion for it. Your business will grow out of that and mostly into clients that are like you. And so you just don't have to face it a ton, but I think it's nice to say there's a way I really want to do it. And if you'll let me tell you about how I've helped other families do it, the way a lot of people want to sell their home, like, is the nice way to set it all up. But yeah, that's kind of a tough one, because it feels like I'm not even a realtor if I just put your dirty home in the MLS with no photos. Like, you could go hire Ralph with List with Freedom for $100. We talked about on the Facebook page, like, he'll do more than I'm doing for you probably. So that's a really good question. What other questions?
Well, I have a question, but also a comment about what you just said, because I looked up that house yesterday on the MLS that you were talking about, and all the photos were sideways.
Oh.
and a couple of them were really, really bad. I was like, oh gosh. Anyway, you had talked about how, you pay for the pre-inspection and a couple of the other things. So I guess my question to you is, what, on your average listing, what are you paying up front out of your pocket before you list?
Yeah, good question. Up front is the staging consultant, which the gal charges me $125 for an hour. So there's that cost. The photographer and photography and Matterport is maybe $200 a house, which frankly, all those things come paid like at the end of the month. So it's not even really before it lists, but costs I take on whether the house sells or not, maybe that's a better way to look at it, is the staging consultation, $125, photos and Matterport, let's say $200. So it's honestly not a lot. I don't pay for the pre-inspection up front because it's $500 or $450, whatever it is. And that's just more money than I want to have 8 or 10 listings in the pipeline at $500 a piece pre-inspections, and then 3 of them change their mind or whatever. And I think it's just a little skin in the game. They don't want to walk away and find another realtor if they get their feelings hurt over something, because they know they don't get the $500 reimbursed to them. So I've seller pay for pre-inspection and I pay them back. Though what I've noticed, and I'm not knocking anyone for it, but as pre-inspections have become more popular, and I used to use that to set myself apart, and we should all do them. I'll be happy to lose some gold stars my own marketing plan if we all do pre-inspections. I think it's good all around. But I know some agents I don't know what the evolution was, but a lot of agents are now like, hey, I'll pay for it up front. I don't know if it used to be like, they'll say, hey, some agents make you pay for this nasty thing up front, but I'm not going to make you do it that way. But I'm happy to reimburse a person at the end. I've never really had an issue with it. Honestly, if it's like this wonderful school teacher tight on funds and whatever, the house is going to sell in 16 seconds, I would take that risk. But a real wishy-washy seller who's more difficult than most, I would never pay for their pre-inspection up front, but that's just me.
So we do pay for the pre-inspection up front. We have a pre-inspection we have one that we can get for $300 and one we get for $350. And we actually don't make the sellers pay for it at all. My belief has been, and we're a little more fortunate in that 100% of our business is by referral. So the trust is pretty much there, and we very seldom compete. Even the last one we just competed on, the seller knew us, and their company was making them compete. She told me right up front, I don't care what you guys say, you're going to win. So we don't really have that situation. but I don't want commission to be any part of a conversation. So I present value right up front, and we do the same thing. We pay for $100 for the staging consultation, 100 to $350 between pictures. If we do Matterport, drone, any of that. So somewhere like average of 200, I'd say. And then $350 for the, did I say that already? The consultation is $100. The pictures are like, let's say average of 200, 250, and then $350 for the pre-inspection. But we don't do any, we don't play with commissions, and we get, our goal in every one of those listings and sales is to elicit at least 1 to 2 referrals during that transaction. So, it's kind of a more holistic approach to it. And I want to put something on the table. However, in order to order the pre-inspection, we get a signed contract. We don't order a pre-inspection without a signed contract. So, and I think, Ben, to your point about pre-inspections, 14 years ago when I moved here from California, it was always pre-inspections were always done. Stuff was off the table in the offer. Termite reports it was all done before. So it was odd to me that people were not doing pre-inspections or some kind of inspections. I love that so many people are doing them now. And I think it's because of what you said. There's so many sure things that you're not really taking that huge of a risk. And then isn't it Aubrey that has if you cancel, you pay for the inspection? Do you have that too, Ben? You have something they sign or yeah.
No,
well,
no,
I think
don't do that.
Aubrey has something in place, or she does the reimbursement too. I don't know. So yeah, so there's all kinds of ways to do it. Is you can say if for some reason you cancel or the house doesn't sell, you have them sign something that they reimburse you for the pre-inspection. I don't know. There's all kinds of ways to cover that, but I think it makes for us to have a better market. The offers are much more pure. I think I feel better knowing people are buying houses with some kind of sense of what the house, the condition of the house, without them having to give that up. From an ethical point of view, it makes me feel better. So I think it's just whatever you decide to be your practice. So who other on here that has been doing listings does pre-inspections? Anybody else here?
I do them as well. I usually split it with them at the end and reimburse them, maybe the $200. But I agree, pre-inspection makes everything a lot cleaner.
Sorry about that, you guys. Everybody still there?
I think we lost Ben.
Oh, I know something happened. Let me see if he's checked back in. Nope. Hey, Ben, where are you? Sorry, my plumber guy was leaving. Tim's gone too. Christy, was it you that was talking about doing the pre?
Yes. So I also do pre-inspections, and I usually split it with them at the end and reimburse them, like the $200 or whatever it was,
Okay.
to get the pre-inspection done.
So what do you do? Let's talk about that, Christy, until Ben comes back. Once you get the pre-inspection, then what do you do with the client? Do you fix things? Do you review it? Talk about that.
As far as fixing things, if it's something that they can fix on their own, I encourage that if they feel comfortable fixing it, to fix it. If
Such
it's
as?
something that, maybe like, oh gosh, what have we fixed in the
Loose
past?
toilet.
Loose toilet, or there was one that came back that there was a small gas leak, which all you have to do is call MUD and they come out and fix that for free most of the time. And then if there's maybe a small leak in a faucet, if it just needs tightened, a lot of times those inspectors, the inspector I use tells you how to fix it, so that makes it easier too. But if it's something that I think could get in the way of a good offer, I encourage them to get it fixed, or at least get a bid. I like to have bids in my back pocket, because if there's something that could be a problem, I want to know how much it's going to cost for us to fix it. So if somebody does request that to be fixed, we know how much we're out.
Yeah.
So like mud jacking, for instance, or if it was a tripping hazard for a VA or FHA loan, we might need to mud jack this. So let's get a bid. Or
yeah, good. Those are really good points. And to the point of the more, and for all of you that are asking questions and are new here, the more answers that you give people, the less questions they ask, the less deep questions that they ask. And you're always better to have somebody go ahead and fix a leaky faucet rather than have a plumber come in and say, this whole thing needs to be replaced. So there's just two different modes that you set yourself in for the listing, and particularly in this fast moving, high dollar seller leaning market. I think that's the best thing that you can do, and keep your reputation as a good agent as well.
Well, and some of those things you can hire a handyman to fix for like half the cost, where he might be able to fix a loose handrail or a leaky faucet and get it all done in one trip, rather than having, the buyer asking for a licensed plumber to fix a leaky faucet, or a licensed electrician to, do minor things, where you could have probably tackled that for half the cost initially with a handyman. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. I just had a plumber install a new dishwasher, and it was $417. Where if it was somebody that was a $80 an hour person that came in and hooked it up, a handyman person could have done that. It probably would have been a lot cheaper. So it's the buyer is always going to want the licensed professional, and the seller is always going to want whoever can get the job done for the cheapest. So just know that you're in control before the buyer is involved. And not every house is going to be sold in as is, I'm not going to check anything kind of condition. And a lot of times if they do, they have buyer's remorse, and all of a sudden you see, and I'm noticing that, I don't know if you guys are, but several houses coming back on the market, or price reductions. Are you seeing that, Ben?
Yeah. Or I kind of like the emails that says, we made it through the weekend with no offers.
I love that.
I know. It's kind of a nice way to actually measure the pace of the market. It didn't sell. So
yeah. We wrote an offer on something that had a $10,000 price reduction in 2 days on the market, and we wrote an offer. We weren't competing against anybody, so it went 2 days. Nobody wrote an offer. We jumped in, no competition. We got an accepted offer as written within 30 minutes. So, if you just, it's like watching a jump rope. And right now there's, and there always is this time of year when graduation's happening and school's ending and summer stuff is starting. So, yeah. All right, keep going. Your questions are great.
I didn't know, because when I got kicked out, if the question was, what do you have a seller fix after a pre-inspection? I don't know
Yes.
if that, I
Yeah.
heard some answers related to that. So.
And give them, what kind of options do you give them?
So I give the seller the same spiel. I say, now the inspector just left. We're going to stand and talk a little longer. There's kind of two theories. Sometimes there's something so big and nasty, there's no way we can't not have it fixed. I always say hail damage to the roof. We can't price your home low enough that a buyer's going to be okay with your roof covered in hail damage. I mean, so we can't get past that one. So sometimes there's something so big, we just can't not do it. But frankly, most of the time that's not the case. And I'll say the other end of the spectrum is sometimes there's just things that are too easy not to fix that will, as I make dictations on this report, start to cut in half practically the number of things wrong with your house. So those are the two ends of the spectrum. Some things you just have to do because you can't sell without it. Most people don't have that. Most people have just kind of a few medium things. And then there's a lot of things that are not scary to anybody, like a slow draining sink or a latch on the door is a little stuck. I mean, things that are free to correct, or your toilet needs tightened down. There's a lot of free things, or you need a little stress relief clamp on your dishwasher or disposal. It's 99 cents. So I just had 2 pre-inspections yesterday. And for each seller we went through the list, we made notes. It was about half the items I encouraged them to take care of, didn't require. And most of those are probably under $10 things to get a little part, or dad will help. So when we list, there's a couple of large to medium to large things that we're not going to do, and we probably aren't going to have to. One, because there's only 7 things wrong with the house instead of 16. And the market makes the buyer have to be a little more gracious. But I always tell them to fix the things that are too easy not to fix, like hair in your sink. That's a good one. Your sink drains slowly. It's because your hair's inside of it. That's not going to scare a buyer. That's not expensive. It's kind of frankly just gross. Please do it. It's going to cost you nothing. We've cut the list down by 8% because and you got 3 of those sinks. Great. 3 line items taken care of. So if there is something really big and scary though, like hail, we may be delaying the listing because we have to sort some of those things out. But again, as I was telling Julia, you got these one-offs, these funny sellers. The more your reputation grows and people that are like you are attracted to you, who take care of their homes, you're getting really great, wonderful sellers who took care of their home, and they're just good people. And so there's not much wrong. So the dirty little secret in real estate is the nicer you are and the nicer the people you attract, the nicer time you're going to have selling their house, because they're doing all the work for you. But anyways, that's how I guide through what repairs to do. And I'll give recommendations for handy people or plumbers and things. Getting the HVAC serviced is usually a pretty common one that comes up. It hasn't been done for years. So anyways, that's the conversation I always have. Too big not to do, too easy not to do. That takes care of most of them. So there you go. Carol, did you have a question? If not, I was going to double back to something.
No, I was going to ask them if they had questions, but go ahead. You just go. I'm going to mute.
Jackie, you had asked about paying for things up front. And so I thought maybe that conversation steers a little bit towards, or at least it has in the past. So like, when do you get a listing agreement signed? How much work do you do for the seller before they've legally bound themselves to you? Some agents have a really hard line on, I'm going to do almost nothing for you until I know you are my legal client on paper. Sometimes I feel like there's just a little, I don't know, tension or complexity to saying, look, I'm not going to do another thing for you until you sign my paperwork, which we wouldn't say it that way. But usually in the ebb and flow of the CMA and getting something listed, I will do plenty of homework, which is on my time and dime. Go to their house, which is on my time or dime. I want obviously investing some of my own just know-how and time worth money into them. But once they say, hey, we're good to list, I'll say, great. The things we need to do next is listing paperwork. We're going to have to sign, of course. That's a real easy one. I'll get you once we get that taken care of, I'll get you the staging consultant's information. I'll work on the pre-inspection. You already have some work you're going to do in the house. I gave you some guidance, but I usually don't have an issue getting the listing paperwork signed, especially I'll just say I'll do it digitally. The funny one is a seller who's like kind of been in your pipeline for like 18 months because they were a family friend and you met once and you've always kind of just been talking about when the time comes to sell their house. But it's not going to be until next summer. And you're like, a lot can happen between now and then. They could list with anyone, their neighbor knocks on their door. So to me, that's kind of the toughest one, is to tell a seller who's not really a seller, I want you to sign this legally binding paperwork for me so that really I'm protected over the next 12 months and you don't, but that's what we kind of need to do. So to me, that is kind of the toughest one. My hope is in that conversation, well, I should back up. Some sellers say, it was great to meet you. We're going to list with you next year. We're doing this well in advance. You can never force that person to sign paperwork who's your family friend and they just needed some guidance and it's going to be next summer. Like they're not even a seller yet. Sometimes you just have to let those go and stay in touch. And if their neighbor buys their house privately from them, I got to be happy for my family friend. Most people don't fall into that category. It's a real bona fide seller, but they just might be a few months from now. They're not going to sign paperwork with you until they've identified you as their realtor. So I guess there's a little floating in the balance as they interview realtors. But once they tell me, hey, we'd like to work with you, but it's going to be in a few months, I will right away say, great, here's what we need to do. I'm just going to put together the listing paperwork and I'm going to send it to you to look over and you can be able to sign it digitally. I tell them it's always free of listing date and listing price because we don't know when it's going to be listed or what price it's going to be, but everything else we just want to sign so it's in place. That is not a legally binding listing agreement. If it has no start date or stop date or price, they're not listed with me. But most people just don't realize that. The act of signing anything makes them feel committed to me. So I'll always do that. Or so I'll put it together, send to you. You sign it, call with questions, get it signed. Once we have that, we can start working on getting the stagers information to you, and I'll get the pre-inspection schedule. So I do sort of drag it out a little, waiting for the good stuff to come. But I don't know. Do you have any difficulty with that? The seller who's not a bona fide seller, I'm listing in 2 weeks, but they're kind of going to be your seller. Because to me, that's where you lose people and you really are heartsick over it. And you didn't really do anything wrong, but you also probably didn't do a few things right that you should have done just to get them bound to you. So I don't know. Julia, do you have difficulty with that?
I had one instance kind of right out of the gate. A coworker's father wanted to sell his home and he was not living in Nebraska at the time. And this home, it also ties into a different question I had. He's owned it for decades, so there was no info in the MLS at all. So a side question is, how do you have an idea of the CMA when there's nothing in the MLS? So I met the daughter at the home and kind of basically went through to get information, and he wanted kind of an idea of what it was worth. And, they asked if I would work with them, but, it's like, they asked the questions of, can you help my dad with his house? It's like, well, that's a different question than, can you be our realtor? And so it was a good learning experience. I found some really great comps after I had seen the home inside. And he didn't really like the analysis. Like, he thought his home would be worth a lot more, even though I really did my research and felt really confident about my CMA. And so he ended up just selling it to his other daughter instead, which was fine. I just felt like I don't know. I just felt like I maybe missed the boat a little bit, but it's also part of that. How much do you help someone out if they're not, committing to have you as their realtor? It's kind of an awkward conversation to have that I think I probably botched in that case.
Right. A couple of things. Sometimes the seller says, hey, I'm either going to sell my house privately to my neighbor's kid or, my brother, I don't know, or I'm going to list it. And to me, it's like there's a 50% chance that I do a ton of work and I get nothing for it, which I don't even want to risk 50% because there's people who 100% want me and need me. And I want and need them to. So sometimes if I can get to it early enough, I will just ask a seller, you know, or I'll tell them probably the best thing to do is I would explore that totally with your neighbor's grown son. Like if that's something in the works, I don't want to interfere with that. Honestly, there's not even really a role I have. I mean, there's not. Like if they're going to sell it to their own family member, there's literally nothing we can do for them, or I'd even feel honorable getting paid for. It's like I just you're selling to your brother. I don't care. So I'll say I would explore that first, but more often than not, seller, because I've been through this so many times, the I'll buy your house someday idea always sounds really good until you say, hey, you need to buy it at this price and you need your money, like you need to buy it this month. Most of the time, it just becomes a big distraction, honestly, seller, that we're like waiting for this neighbor's son to show up to buy your house. So I would please go explore that and then see it to fruition. But if they're not ready to do it right now, then that's okay. It's pretty normal that they wish they could, but they really can't do it like they wanted to. Then we should talk more about selling your house. So, which is true. It's like, if that's who you want to sell it to, you should go do it. But I have just learned you're probably not going to be successful. I have one right now. I spent, the emails were like 19 paragraphs long. It's 3 sellers, different states. It's this rental property. I mean, I wish I could just talk to them because I typed for hours giving them these answers to stuff. So I really put some time into it. And then they said, well, our tenant might buy it or we might list it. And I said, you know, kind of like I stopped myself there. I said, all good. I would see if he wants to do that. Here's the price we talked about. He needs to buy it at, you know, I'd sell it to him at 175 and give him a few days to do it. But if not, it just will become a distraction hanging on for some person that's just never going to come through. And then we should just dive full blast into listing. So I really try to let them go do that and get over it as quick as possible, because we can't do both, or at least I'm not going to let myself do both. All the work and conversation and communication working up to listing, and then the brother shows up 30 days into this whole thing. So that's normally how I handle that. And I just like it. But if they're not going to buy it, then we just move on. And with these sellers, I said, offer it to him at 175 as is. If not, I'm going to send you the listing paperwork because we're going to want to go full blast into that. So, and they said, great, we'll give them till Tuesday. Of course, the tenant who lives in this dumpy house, who isn't caring for the property, I just could tell had no ability to go get a more. It felt like that's not the person who's going to buy your house. So anyways, that's how I sort of sift through that. But I've also gotten over the fact that like not every sale requires a realtor or is there money to be made by a realtor. And it just always feels crummy when you watch a realtor try to like wriggle their way in to somehow scrape off like $3 to $6 grand from a dad who's going to sell his house to his best friend's son. It's like, you've all known each other for decades. Like people have even called me and said, hey, what can you do for me? Can you do this? And I've said, I will do the paperwork, but like, it's such a limited role. And they're like, what are you going to charge you? I finally started telling people when I know it's about an hour of my time, but I'm like, I'll do all the paperwork and execute it all, but for like $3,000, because I'm not going to, it takes 28 minutes. I'm not going to charge them $45, you know? So it's like, either you pay $3 grand and I'll do it, but you really don't need me. I've even talked to people out of like, just, you can call a title company, and people are like, no, I really want your help. Anyways, it is kind of a funny one, but they should sell it privately or they should hire me. Then I don't get my feelings hurt as I chase them for months.
The point that you're making too about Ben is if you are going to do that, your name and your license is now going to be part of that transaction. So don't just do it for $100. You know, what you think would be great hourly, like you are now entering into being a party to that transaction if something goes wrong. So what is that? You know, make it have value, and also make it be respectful. You know, it just, you wouldn't go to a surgeon and say, I only need like a little piece of my appendix taken out. Can you just do that by the hour? Hey, if I'm entering in there and I'm putting you or anything at risk, I'm going to make it worth my while, but you don't need me. So, I mean, that was a great conversation, Ben. And just so you guys know, there is always the neighbor who wants to buy the house or the family member who wants to buy. And Ben, your advice is spot frickin' on. Like, let them go through it. Just encourage, give them the all sides of it. Let them go through it, because as soon as they actually are in it and they say, okay, so now how do you do this? How do you do that? They realize what they're actually doing. And right now, the best thing you've got going for you is this market that is unpredictable and usually in their favor. So, and the other statement I love you said is not every transaction needs a realtor. It's just true. Not every transaction needs a realtor. Not every boo-boo that a kid gets needs the emergency room. So I think not operating from, I've got to have this deal, and operating from, how can I serve? Having that as your main operation mode, as Ben does, and the reason why he's successful, is going to be your best bet. And that 10 years from now, you're going to look back and you're going to say, I was of service. I didn't like kick ass in the real estate world as much as I was at service, and it happened to make my life better. So
the other tough one that goes along with that sometimes is you have a listing contract signed, it's ready to go in the MLS in a week, and they say sometimes it's the person we all know, seller and myself, had said, hey, they would want to come by my condo. What do you think? Should I let them in early? And so that's always kind of a funny one too, because we know the listing contract signed. We know if their house sells, doesn't matter whether the buyer brings a realtor or not, you're going to pay me a commission because your property sold. But you can just tell if they get their buddy in, their friend, and they come by it early, the seller is going to expect you make less commission because you didn't do anything, meaning it didn't actually hit the market. And to me, that's kind of a tough one to navigate, is, can I let my friend come by it? And can you help my friend and me do this privately? And I'm going to pay you less. Honestly, I'd rather make my full commission and work a little bit harder, take a few calls and let the showings happen and get to several offers, because I would rather I want to get paid the full commission. But a seller hopes if they can sell it for you as the agent, that you'll do them a solid and charge them less commission. So that, it seems like I get every 10 transactions, we'd almost to the start line, and then they bring this up. So I don't want to make the less commission. And so I would always tell people is, we can let them look at it. It's a favor you want to do for your friend, but I will tell you the difficulty is that if they look at it and if they like it and if they want to write an offer, it's all good and conversational and seems like a good idea, except you're going to be in a real bind when you're faced with, do I sell it to my friend today, or do I sell it for probably a lot more money, or at least with better terms and conditions in 2 days from now? And I just never want to have a seller in that bind where they feel like I got to do a favor for my friend. And it might just make your life easier to not have to play favorites. And if your friend really wants it, they come with a realtor when the home's listed. So, and it really is. I mean, I'd be torn if I got an offer today on something I was trying to sell, and there was an allure of maybe more was going to come in a week from now, but this is here today. I kind of don't ever want to get in that bind. And so I don't want to put a seller in that bind either. So normally once I explain that, they're like, oh yeah, it feels like a good idea to sell it to my friend, but we better just do it, get it publicly. And then the weight's off my shoulder to never have to converse about, well, you charge less if my friend's the buyer and I'd rather make all my commission and let another agent bring the buyer and do half of the work. So anyways, that's just kind of a subsect of that whole idea of not selling it totally publicly, but I'd usually talk sellers out of it.
You're competing against agents who have these different combinations of how they're going to charge commission. If I bring the buyer, if if I have the buyer and the seller, both sides, it's this. And so they're comparing you a lot of times to what somebody else told them or what their family or their friends told them. You have to ask for a discount. You have to, it's rhetoric that you're going to just be prepared for. Always have those kind of answers. And answering questions like that, like the question, just as an example, the question of, do you discount your price? My answer to that would be, oh, is that something that is important to you? Is that something that is going to be one of your top decision-making factors? And I'll listen to them, and they'll 9 times out of 10, they're like, no, not really. But my dad told me to ask, I get that. I get those a lot. And then I just go into where the value is. I don't argue it. I don't fight it. I don't compromise. I just don't. And that it's hard to get there, but you will. And when you're new, you're like, I've got a new agent that I've been talking to for the last year, and she's still doing like, well, I'm doing it for 5% because I know them. I said, that's how we're trying to build your businesses, with people that but that person who knows the next one that's going to come to you, and they're going to say, well, you gave 5% to them. They already told me. So now you're a 5%, or now you're a discount broker as far as I'm concerned. So just know that what you're setting up right now, you're going to be living with, if you're building a relational business by referral. So
I agree. That's why I don't want to do the slot. I don't want to list it the wrong way, like the hoarder and the no photos. It's like, there's a really right way for me to sell your house. And it's like, and I've explained how it works and why it works and how great it is. And your friends thought it was great, but I just want to keep doing it this way. I don't want to become a lesser agent to fit a particular scenario,
and you want other to notice when a listing of yours comes on the market, they all recognize it. You know who Andrea Kavanaugh is, Ben and Christy. I could always recognize her listing. She'd always have a bowl of green apples in the kitchen. Every single one that I'd look at, because she had a good photographer, and she always had, no matter whether it was $100,000 house or a $500,000 house, it was always this signature bowl of green apples. And I think when people see that you have a listing, they immediately know that is going to be, that is going to have a level of really being ready. And there's agents there's an agent that works for, I think, Nebraska. And I would look at these listings and I'd be like, oh my God, he took all the pictures with his cell phone. Toilet seats are up. The towels are crooked. Things like this that drive me crazy. The towels are crooked. There's crap everywhere in the kitchen, whatever. And they all look like that. Well, we got into contract on one of those houses. And what I found out is that he charges his clients, his sellers, total 3.5%. That's exactly what they get. So just know that your signature is out there on every single listing that you do. And think of do you guys have something like that you want to do? Your bowl of green apples. What's your bowl of green apples? I don't really have a bowl of green apples, but I always recognize that with Andrea Kavanaugh. I don't know if she still does it or not. You have one of those, Ben?
I'm so sorry. I don't want to interrupt. I just wanted to say bye. I have a class coming now, so I have to go. But thank you so much for all your help. Sorry.
You're welcome.
Bye. Thank you.
Joining us. I didn't even realize what time it was. So you want to wrap this up? Great stuff.
Yeah, if there's a burning question or two that I just want it to be valuable for you. So that's the priority to me.
Dana, Jackie, Christy, anybody got any last things?
I just wanted to say that I really liked the video. I thought the video was very educational, well done. I think the thing that kind of stood out for me, which sounds a little silly, but one of your points in the video that you say to your clients or prospective clients is, I'm really here to help you. What do you need me to do? Kind of. So I thought it's very simple. Of course, we should all know that, but it just kind of resonated. So
Sometimes I forget and I just hit them with real estate info, and it's like, I'm even going to one this afternoon, and I think they probably know plenty of realtors. We're all pretty smart, but like, I hope I win them over because they say I'll care about their family best. The numbers and the listings and the photos, we're all getting better at photos and better at understanding pre-inspections and better at hiring Matterport photographers, because those are just things you pay for. What people can't reproduce is like a real sincerity to care about your family, and either you will or you won't. And I know I will. Sometimes I forget to demonstrate it, which is total shame on me. It's like 100 sales, blah, 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 blah. It's like, yeah, but we hired the other agent because they were going to hold our hand more kindly than you were. It's like, Ben, you're an idiot, because you would hold their hand better than anybody, but you forgot to tell them because you thought 100 sounded more important. It never really does. It's the connection and the care. And so I really have an appointment this afternoon. So I'm going to make sure I double down on the sincerity, because it's just too easy to get wrapped up in anything other than we're just humans, and humans like need a little caring and stuff. So that will probably help me this afternoon.
Great job. All right. So Ben, I'm gonna get you for July, maybe even for June for the purchase agreement one, because we're going deep into this stuff. Just even today's conversation has been, really specific to the details that make a difference, that really make a difference. So I love that you guys ask the good questions, and that you're all so curious. There's 11 of them in the 100 Days to Greatness class, Ben. And if you can join us sometime we're doing them on Monday nights at 7:00 now. And this class is probably one of the best, curious, authentic, just very, they want to learn class. So it's a teacher's dream, and you're a teacher. So you'll love it. Ben used to be a teacher. Did you guys know that? And he still is. I call him a lot for that. So yeah. Thank you guys. And we'll see you next week, or see you
If you
tomorrow.
have other questions, you can send me questions privately. You can always call. I love chatting on the phone. So certainly call with other things.
Is going to be really good. It's going to be a lot about the fair housing stuff that we have to be very careful about, particularly with love letters and doing our purchase agreements now. And it's the guy who is the education director for the Iowa Commission, or Iowa Board of Realtors. So anyway, I listened to him, and he's really, really good. So we'll see you guys tomorrow. Join us tomorrow, Ben, if you can.
Thank you, Ben.
Thanks, you guys.
Bye.
Take care.